Welcome to the Notre Dame Preparatory High School's How-To Guide series. In this video, we are going to go over the distribution and the setup of your freshman's new iPad. These are the iPads that will be distributed out to the Summer School 2017 and Fall Summer 2017 freshmen. And these iPads come in three configurations. The first is the base configuration, which is a 9.7-inch iPad with 32 gigs of storage. The upgraded configuration is also a 9.7-inch iPad, but it has 128 gigs of storage. And this one in particular is the specialty iPad, which is the 12.9-inch screen with 128 gigs of storage. Now each student is going to receive an iPad still in its box and a keyboard case from Logitech. You'll take it home just like this, and you'll see the iPad is still in its wrapper. The one thing we did do was put an asset tag on it that will help us with tracking and inventory. In the box you'll also find the charging brick. Make sure you only use the charging bricks with the 12 watt-hour insignia here down at the bottom. If you use an iPhone charger, it will not be powerful enough to charge these devices, or it will just charge them very slowly. And you will also receive a 3 or 6 foot iPhone Lightning cable. Apple also includes documentation with these iPads, and it also includes some stickers in there if you want those. The iPad keyboard is from Logitech, and it serves two functions. The first is to protect the iPad. It goes on the front and the back of the iPad, so you'll get protection from both sides, and it will protect against minor drops. The iPad case itself, and this is the same keyboard that comes with the 9.7-inch iPad Pros, so this video will serve the purpose for that as well. And the keyboard itself comes with a full QWERTY keyboard, and the keys are actually pretty responsive. They feel like any other laptop keyboard out there. And inside the box you will find an instruction manual on how to put the iPad in. The easiest way to install the iPad on these keyboards is to open it up fully. Have your iPad so the home button is on the right hand side and the power button is on the left. And you want to slide in the power button side first because there are little catches. And then you want to push down firmly on the iPad itself and then push up into the top of the case. This way, when the iPad is fully seated into these little connectors right here, these are called the smart connectors, you'll hear a nice little clack, and then the iPad is fully usable. What you'll also notice on the keyboards are they are backlit keys, so your student can actually use them in a dimly lit environment. So let's go over the setup process on what you should do when you get the iPad. When you first turn your iPad on, you will be greeted with a number of welcome messages in various languages. You want to press any key and go into your language. For now it's going to be English. United States for the country, and we're going to choose student. But obviously if you're at home, you want to select whatever home network that you have already set up. If you are at a coffee shop, the one thing to consider is they might require you to log in with a splash page. Sometimes that does not work during the setup process, so if you're having issues, you might want to try a different wireless network somewhere else. Once you're accepted into that wireless network, you'll see it takes a couple of seconds to activate the iPad. The next thing you'll see is a configuration page. Your student's iPad is connected to the Notre Dame Preparatory's Device Enrollment Protective Server. And what this means is if your student were to lose their iPad or it were to get stolen, we actually have control over that device to where we could either wipe it or we can try and find it using a location ping. We can also use this server to handle any other management protocols that we need to, whether it be to install applications on your student's iPad, to limit their access to various wireless networks, to downloading certain applications. We can do a lot of things, and it's constantly changing as time goes on. But that's one of the benefits of having an iPad supplied from Notre Dame, is we do have this capability. So you want to connect and hit next on the upper right. And this is going to be your student's username and password that is set up when you receive the iPad for the first time. Now this username is going to be your student's name. Normally it's the first initial, last name, and then the graduating year. So for this instance, we'll just use my name as an example. It would be nyoung21 at ndpsaints.org. That's the full username. For this instance, we're just going to use the username itself and not the at ndpsaints.org address at the end. Now for this, I'm using my staff credentials, but this will work with your student credentials as well. You want to hit next. And what this is doing is it's going through and pinging our server to see if the credentials used are still valid or not. And if it shows that it is, it will come here to this welcome iPad screen, and you want to hit get started. Okay, after it goes through the initial setup process, you will see a notification that says that it wants to install an application called Meraki. Now this application is the one that NDP uses to manage all the accounts and the iPads that your students use on campus here. What you want to do is two things. You want to hit the sign in button, and if you already have an existing Apple account and an iCloud account using the students at ndpsaints.org address, you can use the existing Apple ID sign-in button. If you have an existing Apple ID already, say your student has an iPad already and they have an account that they've used for a little while, they can also use that if they want to. For this sign-on, I'm going to use an existing account. And for this, I'm going to use the testing account that I made for it. So you want to use the full at ndpsaints.org, and you want to type in your password. It will go through and ask you to verify the password a couple more times. It will then ask you if you want to require passwords for this device. I usually hit require after 15 minutes. And it will automatically download an application called Meraki MDM. It has a gray icon with some green letters. We're going to hit dismiss on the edit home screen button. And then you want to open up Meraki. It'll ask you if you want to send notifications. Hit yes. This application allows us to actually send your student direct messages via the application, so I suggest every iPad and account have that turned on. If for some reason the location section has a red X through it, you want to hit the drop down and hit the enable button on the right hand side. What you'll see here is it says location never, and it's grayed out so you can't actually touch it. So you want to scroll all the way up to the top and hit the privacy section and location services. And you want to turn location services on. Now if you scroll all the way back down to the bottom under Meraki MDM, you'll see location services has been turned back on. So you can go back to the application and it asks whether you want to enable or skip location services. I would hit enable. This allows our Meraki system to actually see the iPad wherever it is in the world, and it helps us to be able to track down the iPads if for some reason they get lost. Now there's two more tabs down here at the bottom of this Meraki app. The first one is the backpack. This allows us to add files and different things that the students can download. A couple of things that we've done with this is sending out alerts to the students' iPads for various campus events or something like that. There's also an apps tab. All the ones that are listed here are the applications that are pre-approved from Notre Dame. You can install whatever app you want from the App Store, but these are the ones that we feel are critical to your students' productivity. So the first one we're going to look at is Canvas by Instructure. We're going to download that application, and since we told it that we don't want to put in a passcode for the next 15 minutes, it should download automatically on its own. We also want to download the rest of them as well. And once you have green check marks on all of them, you can close the Meraki application. What you'll see is all the apps start populating. Now you want to go through and configure the apps that you just downloaded. The first one to configure would be the Gmail application. If you open it up, it might already prompt you to go ahead and sign in. If not, you'd have to put in your username and password. And we found Gmail is the easiest way that students can access their Gmail information. The students can use the built-in mail application within iOS, so it's completely up to them. We have found that students like using Gmail because it does compartmentalize their classwork. Some of these other applications that we have are Google Docs and Google Sheets and Google Drive. One of the main storage options that the student can use is Google Drive. So you want to open the application up and hit sign in. Okay. And it should pick up the account settings from when you signed into Gmail itself. So you can turn on get notified when new files are added. Your student does have a fairly large storage amount on their Google Drive, so we suggest every student actually use that for their schoolwork. Google Drive does interface with a number of different applications like OneNote, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Notability, which are a couple of the popular ones. The other application that we need to have your student sign into is Canvas. That is that learning management system application. The first thing you want to do is type in the school district. When you open up the Canvas application, you'll need to put in the domain or the school district. For this, we're going to put in NDP Saints and hit the arrow key. And you'll put your student's login information on this one. When you press the login button, it will ask you to allow iOS to access your Canvas account. I would put remember authorization so you don't have to go through this again, and hit authorize. And you want it to allow push notifications. If it comes up with an error about the push notifications, don't worry about that, just hit dismiss. And now you have access to Canvas. This test user isn't actually signed up for any courses, that's why you don't see anything on here, but when your student is signed up, you'll see some boxes with all the different course options. Okay. And then what you want to do is enable a Microsoft account. For this instance, we're going to go into Word. Each student has a Microsoft 365 account already established to it. You want to turn on notifications for these, and you're all set to use Word. Obviously, you have a couple of different options from Microsoft. You have PowerPoint to create presentations, you have Excel to create spreadsheets, and you have OneNote to create notes. Some teachers prefer the use of Notability, while others just prefer to use regular text edit or something like that. I personally prefer this application because it allows you to use an Apple Pencil very easily and hand draw notes in class. And you can also go through books and highlight things real easily. Okay, the last thing you want to do is go through iBooks and make sure your username has taken on the account. And under purchased, it shouldn't say please sign into your account. It should just give you the options on the left here. Once you verified that, you can also go into the settings under iTunes and App Store. And what I would recommend is automatically downloading applications, books, and music, because if you're using multiple iOS devices, they'll talk back and forth to each other. One thing that these iPad Pros have enabled is the Touch ID sensor. So you want to go into the settings, scroll down until you see Touch ID and passcode. You want to set up Touch ID to unlock the iPad, and you want the student to put their thumb or index finger, whichever one they want, on the home button a number of times to input their biometric fingerprint. Now, this information is not being shared with Apple. The fingerprint stays on the Apple device, and it doesn't actually go up into the cloud at all. If you've ever set up a newer iPhone that has Touch ID, it's the exact same thing. I'm just setting up a generic code. For right now, it's 6 ones, but you probably want to set up something a little bit more robust than that. You can also set the password for Apple and the iTunes Store to use the fingerprint as well. You can add fingers to this. So for this, it's the right thumb, but you can also add a number of fingers that you want. Another thing you want to do in the settings menu is to enable iCloud and a couple of the iCloud services. So if you come up here to the top left and tap the name, the one thing that you want to enable here for sure is the iCloud section. You want to hit continue. iCloud will want you to do your terms and conditions. Find My iPad is actually a very useful service. It allows you to try and find any lost or stolen Apple device. It also allows you to wipe that device if it is stolen, so the thieves aren't able to get to your actual data. So for iCloud here, you can hop in. There are a couple of different things that you can enable, and a few of these I recommend that you do. The first is photos. You can upload to the iCloud photo library or photo stream. What this allows you to do is any picture that is taken from the iPad will automatically upload to iCloud. That way, if for some reason the iPad breaks, all you have to do is re-sign into your iCloud and it will re-download. You don't want to have an email address associated with it because you already have the @ndpsaints.org address associated with Google. You can basically take all of these off because you're using Google for everything else. I generally let it keep Safari bookmarked because it will go back and forth between the different devices. Same with news and home. You can tell it to sync Game Center, but we're not going to do that for right now. Another thing you can sync is the iCloud keychain. So if you have more than one Apple device, the keychain will move over. Find My iPad should be enabled. You can disable it if you want to, and you can also send last location. What this does is when the iPad's battery is very low and it's about to shut off, it'll send Apple its last known location. So you can try and find it that way. The other one that you want to make sure is enabled is iCloud backup. So if you have it backed up here, you can actually back up the iCloud profile. So if for some reason your student breaks their iPad, all they have to do is re-sign into iCloud and everything is already there. One service that you can use is called iCloud Drive, and it is basically like Google Drive and OneDrive from Microsoft. It's just Apple's version, and this is good if you plan on using the Apple applications like Keynote or Pages or Numbers. Anything that you create in those particular applications get uploaded automatically, and you can turn off iCloud Drive for specific applications. I wouldn't worry about that. Another thing that you might want to consider is turning on two-factor authentication for security purposes. Creates an extra level of security onto your student's iCloud account that will require an additional code to be sent to that person's other device before they can actually sign in. If I were to try and sign in, it will send another code to my iPhone, and I have to input that code into this device before it will let me fully authenticate. What that does is it keeps people from trying to guess your password. If you're using a particularly unsecure password, let's just say it's password, that's a very easy one to try and guess. So if someone guesses that password, even if they get it right, that account code will be sent to your phone, and they're not going to have that account code, so they can't get into your device. So I definitely recommend having that on. And that is it for setup on a Notre Dame Prep iOS device. So if you have any questions, go ahead and send us an email at helpdesk@ndpsaints.org. And if your student ever has any issues with their iPad, whether they crack the screen or they just have general questions why things are not working, they can come into the tech department on campus, and we will try and help them out during school hours. Thank you very much.